Hello, I'm Rhett Power. It's good to be with you here today on What's Next. My co-host is John Baldoni, and What's Next is about previews, predictions, and prognostications. Glad I got that word right today. It's a show that examines what we do now and where we go to prepare for what's next. Whether you own a company, you work for one, or you need information on what you can expect in the wake of COVID-19, and actually now add on some of the social unrest that we're having. A lot of people are asking, what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we make good decisions? And we interview thought leaders on this program, leaders, doers from the worlds of business, science, medicine, economics, media, psychology, who will help us shape the new normal and help us make good decisions for what we have to do. Now let's get started. I'm going to welcome John in to introduce our guest and kick us off with our first question.
Thank you, Rhett. It's a pleasure to have not one, but two noted physicians on the same program for us. So we are very lucky. Let me introduce them, Dr. Julie Rosenberg and Dr. Anna Yusim. Julie Rosenberg is a global health leader who serves as a senior consultant in pharma. She's also a consultant and a frequent speaker and helps leaders get even better by teaching them more conscious living. She worked for many years, or still works in pharma and pharmaceutical development, and she's a certified yoga instructor as well. Anna is a psychiatrist with private practice in New York City and also at Yale Medical Center. Anna has traveled the world, 50 countries, probably in counting, or maybe we're stuck at 50 for the moment, and we'll go from there. Both Julie and Anna are authors. Julie has a couple of books, which are Beyond the Mat, Achieve Focus and Presence and Leadership, and Be True, A Personal Guide to Becoming Your Most Authentic Self. Anna is the author of Fulfilled, How Science of Spirituality Can Help You Live a Happier and More Meaningful Life. So first question is to Julie. Excuse me, I dropped my piece of paper. Where are we now with the efficacy of therapies and a vaccine for COVID-19, Julie?
Well, hi, folks, and hello, John and Rhett. Thank you for having me on the show today. So, you know, the situation with COVID-19 in recent weeks with some of our unrest in society in the U.S. has perhaps gone a bit under the radar, but there's a lot of work going on for both treatments and vaccines that will be effective for this entity. As many individuals may know, there were some positive data with the antiviral drug remdesivir in patients with severe COVID-19, helping them to ameliorate some of the course of their disease. And over time, continued results on remdesivir look promising. Other treatments, both use of known and approved agents and development of new agents, are currently ongoing, being looked at. Of course, it's important to do clinical trials that are comprehensively conducted with clear and precise outcome measures to know if these agents are going to be useful or not. One other thing on the treatment domain that we do think is useful, though, is plasma from patients who have had COVID-19 that has antibodies in it to the virus. And this has proven to be effective for a number of patients, again, with severe disease. And this is a reuse of an old therapeutic modality. I mean, this type of therapy has been around for quite some time. On the vaccine front, there are over 100 vaccine trials in progress. And I think the thing you have to be aware about is that the vaccine trials are conducted with the same caution as drug trials are. And so it is important to do early phase trials, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 3 trials are a large number of patients that are exposed to the vaccine before it would be able to be used in populations. So we hope that by early next year, a vaccine would be available, and as time goes on, more treatments would be proven to be effective. But for now, precaution is really best. It's really best if you don't get the virus. But of course, if you do, there are supportive care measures at home and in the hospital that you can be exposed to and utilize. And then, of course, the treatment that I mentioned, the one that is approved for use, remdesivir, and then others are being used anecdotally. So that's kind of a very brief whirlwind overview, John, but I don't want this to be minimized, the issue with COVID-19 in our current state of affairs. One thing I'm very concerned about that I'll just make mention of is that with the lack of social distancing in many of the protests that we've seen here recently, the lack of wearing masks and the close crowds, one of the things that we worry about is a resurgence of cases. And I think with the incubation period of this virus, we'll probably know in about 2 to 3 weeks what the impact is of the current situation. So in all situations, I would urge folks to exercise thought and caution before they proceed, because this virus still is a global pandemic, which shouldn't be minimized.
Yeah, that makes sense, and thank you for that. It's good to kind of get a real update on what's really happening. Anna, it sort of begs a question. So this follow-up question to Julie's is for you, but it's sort of along the same lines. What's the mental health impact that we're seeing, and what's being done about? I mean, is there a response to the mental health crisis that this is causing? Because I've got to imagine just sort of, I'm sure there are statistics. I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure just sort of anecdotally, I would think from talking to people the last few months, people are affected by this in a lot of ways. And I mean, is there anything being done about that? And what are the numbers? What are the real numbers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the mental health impact, understandably, of this has been tremendous for a number of reasons. One, obviously, is that, we're going about our lives expectantly. We have, deliberate choices that we make, and we, think things are going to work out a certain way. And then suddenly, not only is this something that affects one of us or one city or one country, this is something that's global, forcing a global reset. We have a global pandemic, and all of our sense of normalcy, everything that we expected is suddenly just pulled out from under us. So this results in anxiety, depression, uncertainty, and all the mental health repercussions that go along with that. As far as statistics, nearly half of Americans report that coronavirus has affected their mental health. The Federal Disaster Distress Hotline, where you can text, people who are on the receiving end if you have any issues, basically received 20,000 texts in the month of April. And this is last year at the same time, it was under 2,000 texts. So that's just a little bit of a statistic. In a study of 2,700 people from various industries and countries, and this is including the majority from the US, which was about a third of the sample, in addition to people from France, the UK, Germany, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand, 67% or 2/3 reported higher stress levels. 57% reported greater anxiety. 54% were more emotionally exhausted. 53% felt sadness day to day. 50% were more irritable, and 42% said their general mental health has declined. And I can attest to all this because I see patients and have continued to see patients during the pandemic, many of whom in New York City, where I live, are the frontline workers. I have a lot of doctors and nurses in my practice. And it's been really just one person after the other dealing with the repercussions of this. I can't say that there hasn't been one patient in my practice somehow unaffected by this, whether it was economically, whether their depression got worse, they wanted to go back on medication after they've been off medication for some time, whether they, because what does this force you to do? You're quarantined. So quarantine could be a wonderful thing if you're an introvert and, it reduces social anxiety. I have seen that too. There are some people who've done better, and that's been my introverts. But it also forces you into close quarters. If a relationship is already on rocky grounds, people get even more, displaced from one another, even though they're together. So
how much is it, sort of put it in context, if they were to do this survey in sort of normal times, I mean, are the numbers way, way, way up for that? I mean, is that like double, triple? I mean, how do you put it in context? If you were to do that survey 3 months ago, Would
Yeah, I mean,
would the numbers look like that?
so generally at a given time, probably 20% of the population could
Okay.
meet criteria for a minor depressive episode, for, some form of depression, and
Right.
probably 10% would have some kind of symptoms, right? And the
Right.
symptoms of depression include trouble with sleep, reduced appetite, or eating too much, feelings of sadness, feeling of guilt, feeling overwhelmed, perhaps feeling numb, feeling as though you're a little slower than usual, just not being able to function, perhaps not being able to get out of bed. And we've all been there. This is a state that we as human beings experience. So maybe between 10 to 20% of a population could experience this. Here, over the last few months, I would say probably 50 to 60, if not more percent of the population is experiencing something like this. Those aren't exact statistics, but this is based on the study that I cited and also just what I'm seeing in my practice.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's astonishing.
Julie, states we're in different stages, and I'm glad you issued that cautionary note about we're still in the pandemic, gradually reopening. They're in various stages, stage 1, 2, 3, I guess it's all the way up to 5. So what can businesses do to reopen? What should leaders be watching for?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's really important to take this pandemic seriously. So I've really seen a variety of behaviors around this circumstance. And when I say take it seriously, I am a proponent of wearing masks in public places. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if you work in an office with 2 or 3 people who you know well, who don't have any known exposures, who have normal temperature, that you need to wear your mask all the time. But I do think if you're in a situation where you interface with clients, it's very important to do the CDC recommended survey, which basically is a few question survey about, have people traveled? Have they been exposed to individuals with COVID-19? Have they been ill with respiratory symptoms, etc.? To use hand sanitizer and to promote good hand washing, and to wear masks with clients, and of course to promote social distancing as well. So I think the new normal is really, with businesses, is social distancing, not having big crowds, possibly getting away from the ideas of congregating in break rooms or lunch rooms, being aware that if you're sick, it's not optional not to go to work. I realize that's a double negative, but you need to stay home. It's not optional. You don't want to show up sick. And, I think it's up to individual in places if they wish to take temperatures. There's pros and cons to that. But basically with COVID-19, a number of patients, as many as 30 to 40%, will be asymptomatic. That means they could be affected with the virus without temperature elevation. So the knowledge as to whether or not you've been exposed to someone with COVID-19 is important. So while businesses are reopening, just sort of in summary to those statements, one thing to be mindful of is that at least here in the United States, nothing has really changed. In other words, our awareness has changed, but with the virus itself, cases and deaths do continue to rise. And in terms of contact tracing and adequate testing, both testing for COVID-19 and antibody testing, such tests are still being refined, and contact tracing needs to be more ubiquitous, in our various communities, and it's not yet. So just using your good judgment and exercising caution is very important as you move back into business, because what you don't want to happen is, if you are lax in any way about such practices, to have to close your business again. I think the ramifications of that are probably more severe than if you were to keep it closed a little while to ensure that these best practices are indeed in place.
Yeah, that's a good point, Julie. And what do we look for as business leaders, managers, people, whoever are watching the show, and they've got people that they manage and work with? What are the warning signs that an individual is having some sort of emotional issue or problem or needs help? And I mean, what do we look for? And then how do we approach it? I mean, it seemed to me a really delicate thing to talk to somebody about. So that, I think it'd be really useful to know how to approach somebody.
Absolutely. And I feel in, this day and age, with so many people affected one way or the other, whether through the business financial side or through the mental health side, people are going to have a lot of responses. And the responses, essentially, what you can think of is we've experienced a trauma, and we've experienced that trauma collectively as a society. And what are their responses to trauma? Trauma responses could include symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, and how would that present in a workplace? It could present as people not seeming like themselves or trying their best to hold it together, but things breaking at the seams a little bit. Their productivity going down, them seeming just to be more on edge or more irritable, snapping at people perhaps, not being as present. And we really don't know what these people experienced during the pandemic. They could have been quarantined with someone with whom they've had a difficult relationship, and the relationship could have, gotten even more difficult. They could have, had to work full time, as many people had, while managing young children at home with no childcare. That's incredibly stressful. And people, I know numerous people who've had to do that and basically got no sleep for months on end because they had to do their work when the children were finally sleeping in the middle of the night. And then, other things, they could have lost loved ones. They could have themselves gotten very sick and feared for their life because this was not something that you just waltz through. Some people did, thank goodness, but not everybody did. This is very, very scary.
Spouse could have lost a job. Could have been an economic challenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so being able to see that, and I think also normalizing that as a business leader, to let people know that these are the responses that we've had. And whatever you're feeling, however crazy, unproductive, whatever it is, all of this is normal. And we're all trying to get through this together. We're all trying to pick each other up. So please come to somebody, speak to ourselves, speak to each other. And here is some opportunities for help. And right now in New York City, at least, they're actually, and I think in many cities as well, offering free mental health care and free services to anybody who's interested. So they have a number of people, I have signed up, and a number of my colleagues have signed up to provide that care. There's a hotline you can call. There's also a text line that you can text people. And for frontline workers and first responders, there's a number of other services as well in place. And I think people realize the extent of the mental health burden, and they really want to, make the services and help available.
Seems like, John, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick, and I want to follow up on that with Julie and Anna real quick. Is this something that how can companies get ahead of? You just mentioned some of those free services, some of those other things, but can companies create a system? I mean, it seems like it's a wise thing to do right now. If you have a company of any size, to really have a couple practitioners that you can let people call. I mean, even setting that up as a free service for your people, that even if you don't have it, I mean, some policies have it. Some policies have access to that kind of care. Some don't. But I'm wondering if that's not a smart thing to do internally, and maybe even have somebody come in once a month that they can talk to, or I don't know. It seems like we should set up systems for people to go get the care that they need and make it really visibly available.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that that's so important. And even if you were to give, here's a few numbers of therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists who are available, call them if and when you have time. They're doing everything by telehealth because we are right now. The majority of psychiatrists and psychologist services have not yet opened. Everything's telehealth, making it really easy and reducing the possibility for exposure. And just even making that available to your people shows them that you care, that having any sort of distress, anxiety, depression, whatever they're experiencing isn't stigmatized, but actually that the company recognizes the importance of good mental health for proper functioning and economic stability and success of the company. So I think that's a great idea. And also, being able to bring together people to talk about the effects of collective trauma and what they've experienced, even something like that can be very powerful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I agree with that, Rhett, and I might just add to it, even before bringing in external resources, which I think is a great idea, it seems that it would be prudent as well for leaders to talk to their people as they're coming back into the office, or if they're not coming back in the office, if they're working from home, to get a pulse on the individual, what has been or is the effect on the individual? Do they need any specific accommodations? As Anna was saying, I mean, some of them may have kids still at home. Do they need accommodations? Because if we can support them, internally, perhaps the need for a lot of external assistance won't be as great. That's not to minimize the benefit of external assistance, because honestly, in this type of time, in a collective trauma, in my mind, we all need that, together and probably independently. But if we can take the pulse on the individual and on the organization, and maybe set up some meetings for collective sharing of experiences, I do think the collective trauma can improve substantially by that dialogue if it's in a situation of trust and where people feel valued.
And you're getting ahead of it, and you're meeting them where they are, and you're not making them come to you, and you're saying, look, I care about you. I want to know where you are so that we can create a plan to come back to work together. And I'm not going to stress you out by making you have to come to me with your challenges of coming back to work. So
right. I mean, things aren't the same, and as things have changed, I think we need to understand not only has the environment around us changed, but the environment within our organization and then within each individual in the organization has likely shifted. And if you don't take a pulse on that shift, you may miss something very important in terms of your organizational dynamics. Your culture in an organization may also need to shift a bit to accommodate for our current circumstances. So I find a lot of times, and when there are difficulties, people may tend to gloss over them and or get external resources for support. I'm a big fan of external resources, but I'm not a fan of glossing over things. I think they need to be addressed within the organization, and then one can determine what external resources should and must be available for support, if that makes sense. So I think it's just a little bit of a different angle coming to the same conclusion, and I think we all agree on that matter.
Right. Yeah. Good. It's a good point, and it actually leads into what we're saying. You speak a lot on this issue, and on the leadership Julie, on the leadership implications of this. And I heard recently you said that while we are in a pandemic now, reality dictates that we're probably in an endemic. What does that mean for us and for our businesses?
Well, I think, first of all, let me define endemic. A pandemic is the global circumstance, that we're finding ourselves in with COVID-19, sort of at the forefront of everyone's mind. And it seems to be in all communities, at least most all communities throughout the world. However, unlike what was predicted, where COVID-19 might go away, there are many coronaviruses in our communities that exist. And many of us, myself included, think that COVID-19 over time will wax and wane, the incidence of this virus, like the influenza. Now, of course, we can't necessarily predict the future, but what we might want to do is speculate what could occur if COVID-19 cases and challenges ebb and flow. So for example, in the summer months, while this is not necessarily a virus that is significantly affected by heat, and I live in Florida, and I can say for sure, I think we're 9th in terms of COVID cases when I last checked about a week ago, as per the CDC, among the 50 US states. So definitely in warmer climates, COVID-19 does exist. But as we get more towards summer months, should people, practice all the things we've been talking about in terms of their good habits, we may see a decline in the virus. But then in the winter, as has been predicted by Dr. Fauci and others, when influenza comes around, we could see COVID-19, extending significantly as well. And this pattern could go up and down. And as we know, it's probably about 10 times more virulent than influenza, that is COVID-19, being much more virulent, meaning the effects of the virus can be more severe, especially in populations where there is underlying disease. So I think what we can do is have a preparedness and a recognition of what can occur. Again, I'm not trying to predict the future, and like most physicians, I wish this would go away tomorrow. But I think in our efforts to have people have good health and well-being, the types of practices, including the hand washing, not touching our faces, social distancing, wearing of masks in public places, being mindful of who comes in and out of your organization, not going to work when you're sick. I do feel a bit like a broken record, but these things really do work. And when we ignore them or we don't pay heed to these best practices, we ourselves are perpetuating a problem that is causing, as Anna was just saying, inordinate distress and a collective trauma. So let's address that individually and collectively at home and within our organizations, and let's be proactive in our planning. And that's really my general advice. Let's think about what could be and just be proactive in our planning so that we can address successfully whatever is.
Anna, I am fascinated by the sort of evolution in the last few years of counseling and therapy going online, and I think it's an interesting sort of phenomenon. Do you see that is where therapy and counseling and that kind of thing is really going? Is the office visit a thing of the past, and it going completely online? Is that where we're going? And now I like it because in a sense you can, some of the new services that are out there, you can pick up the phone and call right away and talk to somebody. You can text, you can do a video chat like this. Is that where that is going, and is that a good thing in your opinion?
Right. It's an interesting question. And so for the last 3 months, essentially, I've been doing nothing but telehealth services by virtue of the directives that we've had. And at first, everybody was like, oh my goodness, human contact, so important. And truth be told, it's nothing really beats being in the room with another person. The amount of connection that you have, like you're able to pick up each other's energy. There's something very healing about that. There's something very beautiful about that. And this is what we as human beings like. We're social creatures. We need social contact. We need that sort of connection. And yet now there is this whole other side, because we've been forced to do for the last 3 months nothing but telehealth visits. So for me, I've been doing 30, 40 telehealth visits a week. And at first, some of the patients were like, my goodness, like what's it going to be like? It's not the same. I don't even think I want to do this. And then eventually they try it and they're like, actually, it's not so bad. And I think that that's actually what people are finding. Does it 100% replicate in-person visit? No, because human contact is just something very special that you can't reproduce in a two-dimensional way. But does it come close? Yes, it certainly does. And is this something that I think at least will be an equal or very valuable alternative? Definitely. And what are the advantages of this? The advantages in a way are that you can then work with anybody all over the world, right? You're suddenly global. And this is also not just the case for therapy, but this is the case in terms of academia and teaching. You can be taught by the best and the brightest always. Like the competition now goes up many notches to be the best of the best, because, it's not just what's geographically convenient, it's you can work with anybody. And so I think it is definitely a thing of the future. I think it has a lot of positives. I think the disincentives are the missing of human contact, which I think eventually will be reestablished to some degree. But for many people, it's been just also a blessing to be able to continue to work and connect in this way while we're in quarantine, while we're in the midst of a pandemic/endemic.
So you think it'll be some sort of hybrid of both? You'll have some clients that just want to go and do this just like they've been doing it for the last few months, and others who will want to come back and have that one-on-one face-to-face.
Definitely. And I would say that I have had about 25% of my practice up to this point was already telehealth, because I work with people all over the world. But now it's been 100%. And of that 100%, I think about 10% of people are aching to get back. And the rest of the people are actually just fine with it where it is.
Does that mean you can see more people?
A little bit, yes. I mean, certainly there's no travel time. It's much easier. And so, yes. Yeah, because that's the other thing.
Okay.
Thank you. And both of you are proficient and certified yoga instructors, and it's an integral part of your lives and your practice. So, Dr. Julie, we're going to ask you to give us a breathing exercise, something practical that we can come away with. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so one of the things that I really like about yoga is the opportunity for openness and groundedness. So I thought I'd share, John asked me before the show started, just a very short breathing technique that will help you to be grounded and less reactive and feel more open just in a moment. So if you're not already in this position, if you'll take a comfortable seated position, and it's important to have your feet on the floor, legs hip widths apart. And I want you to just take a moment and just start to slow down a bit and feel the support of the ground underneath your feet. Remember, the earth is always there as a support for you, as a support so that you feel grounded. And as you feel more grounded, just take note of areas of tension in your body and see for a moment if you might just be able to relax. And we're going to work on relaxing for just a few breaths. So if you're not used to deep belly breathing, if you'll put your right hand over your heart and your left hand on your belly, and you can't see my belly in this view, but just lightly on your belly. Most of us, when we breathe in just about 10% of our capacity. So deep belly breathing, otherwise known in yoga as dirga breathing, the 3-part breath, really will help you breathe more deeply. And that will also help you to avoid viral infections. So if you'll begin an inhale deeply from your belly, inhaling through your nose to a count of 3. And then move that up into the chest till you feel very full. And then hold it for a count of 3. And then gradually, through pursed lips, let it go. And say to yourself, relax. And then again, take an inhale from your belly. Feel your belly excursion on that left hand. Up into your chest. Feel your chest excursion. John, don't be stiff. Relax. Everybody relax. And then let that breath out through pursed lips to a count of 3. And then just on your own, as I continue speaking, let's do 2 more breaths. And as you're breathing, I want you to think to yourself, relax. Relax. Feel the support of the ground underneath you. Feel the tension melt away in your body. And then remove your hands and put them, in your lap and come back to your normal state of being. And John, I'll just ask you, how do you feel? Because that was about 90 seconds. Did that shift anything for you? And that's my goal.
Yes, I like this exercise. It makes me feel in contact with my body. And as you know, so much of our time we spend in our heads. And so it's good to be physical. So when I do these, I feel centered. So
yes, and that's the goal, and you're welcome. That's the goal for everyone, to be centered, more grounded. And when we're in that frame, we're much more likely to be non-reactive. So we're much more likely to feel more open, to be more aware and ideally self-aware, and to be less reactive to stimuli in our environment. And so while I don't do it as a formal practice per se, I can say that in order to help myself through these challenging times, I drop into this type of framework with a lot of frequency to avoid upset and to remain relatively calm and thoughtful in the face of adversity and a lot of the collective trauma that we've experienced. So I find it to be a very good tool.
Thank you. Great. Anna, you're going to do something. Thank you, Julie. You're going to do something on meditative exercise, correct? Great. I think you're going to stand on your head. Is that what it is?
Yes, excellent. Because that won't be as amusing as what I'm going to tell you, I think maybe I'll skip the standing on my head. We'll do that next time. And instead, what I'll share with you is a loving kindness meditation, which you'll get much more bandwidth out of. So this is a practice developed many, many years ago that is associated with decreased stress and increased feelings of overall well-being. And it's a meditation, which is a mantra meditation, which is when you repeat to yourself a series of words or phrases, and you repeat it over and over. And there's something in that repetition that's particularly powerful, and especially for this particular meditation, where the meaning of the words is also very powerful. And you do this meditation through a series of 2 repetitions. The first one is you're sending loving kindness to yourself, and you're sending to yourself self-acceptance, self-love, self-compassion, accepting yourself exactly as you are without judgment or criticism. And that seems like such a, easy task on one hand, but we can't imagine what a self-hatred epidemic, unfortunately, we have in our country and our culture. And so this is really radical in that respect. And then after that, you take that same phrase, which I'm going to share with you, and then you direct it towards somebody that you care for and love. And you send to them loving kindness. And I'm going to give you a 4-line phrase, which you could use, but you can also modify it to make it more personal and meaningful to you. So the 4-line phrase I often use is, may I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong. May I give and receive compassion today. And then you take that same phrase, and first, when you do it, you can repeat it a few times to yourself. But then after that, you send it to another person. You're sending another person loving kindness. And so it goes, may you be happy. May you be safe. May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong. May you give and receive compassion today. And I actually have this particular meditation, if you want it guided to take you through it, it's on my website. But I also, if you would like, we could do it a few times and I could just guide you through that.
Absolutely. I'd love it. And that would be fantastic. Yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's then just focus. We're going to do it 3 times. First for 3 times for oneself and 3 times for somebody else. So as you close your eyes and just start breathing in and out, and imagine as though you're breathing in and out of your heart space. So as you breathe in, your heart expands and you're breathing in love. And as you breathe out or exhale, your heart contracts and you're breathing out whatever you don't need, any sort of sadness, negative energy, anything at all. So now we'll start the repetition. May I be happy.
May I be happy.
May I be safe.
May I be safe.
May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May I give and receive compassion today.
May I give and receive compassion today.
May I be happy.
May I be happy.
May I be safe.
May I be safe.
May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May I give and receive compassion today.
May I give and receive compassion today.
May I be happy.
May I be happy.
May I be safe.
May I be safe.
May I be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May I be healthy, safe, and strong.
May I give and receive compassion today.
May I give and receive compassion today.
And so now, think about somebody who you love, to whom you want to send loving kindness energy. And we'll start again. May you be happy.
May you be happy.
May you be safe.
May you be safe.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you give and receive compassion today.
May you give and receive compassion today.
May you be happy.
May you be happy.
May you be safe.
May you be safe.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you give and receive compassion today.
May you give and receive compassion today.
May you be happy.
May you be happy.
May you feel safe.
May you feel safe.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you be healthy, peaceful, and strong.
May you give and receive compassion today.
May you give and receive compassion today.
Beautiful.
Wow. That was excellent. Thank you. I don't know if that's a good place to end it, but maybe it is.
Okay. Thank you both. Thank you both for being on our program.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I kind of have another question then, although I hate to ruin it. I wanted to ask you both, what do you think 1 year from now will look like? Julie, Anna doesn't, but this is for both of you.
Each of you answer.
Well, I can
And how
answer.
how can we take care of ourselves the next year? I think is a nice way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like whenever we're faced with anything that is bigger than us, to which we don't have an immediate solution, what happens is that a million solutions are developed, and we're going to come out on top in unprecedented ways that even we can't imagine right now. Not only are we going to have one treatment, we're probably going to have many treatments, hopefully a vaccine that's going to be able to eradicate this. And I think we are forced as human beings to recover, to look within ourselves. And what we often disregard or forget is the power of the human spirit to overcome anything that's ever been placed in its way in terms of trials and adversities. So I think that at the end of the day, this is only going to force us to rise, to be stronger, to have greater unity, to look within ourselves, and to come up with ingenious solutions for problems that we never could have imagined before.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that, you know, this is an inflection point in our world. You know, we have this virus, we have many challenges with diversity here in the United States, and we need more equanimity in our world. And I think if people take care of themselves through all this and take care of each other, community, society will be stronger. I do think from a business standpoint, even in medicine, while telehealth may not be as prevalent in other areas of medicine where you must have hands-on patient care, the impetus of telehealth is more global now. And as Anna was saying earlier, the collective wisdom of people from all over the world will be more readily accessible for patient care needs, especially those with serious problems. So I think ultimately we'll be stronger, but there will be challenges along the way, bumps in the road, and the important thing is keep your feet on the ground and breathe in the present moment.
Great advice.
Thank you. And I'm glad we ended this way with this thought, because when I think about where we'll be in the future, I honestly have no idea, but what you both expressed was a methodology and an acceptance. And I like to say that the values we hold dear in February will be the values that we hold dear next February. And they'll help shape us our new future. So that's it for today. And thank you for Dr. Julie Rosenberg and Dr. Anna Yusim for being guests on our program, What's Next? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Be well.